Welcome to Igniting Change, the podcast where we explore innovation, industry trends, and how tech for good is solving the world's biggest challenges. Let's get into it.
All right, well, Nick, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast. Really excited to hear about what you've got to say. Did you want to introduce yourself? So tell us who you are and what organisation you're with.
Yeah, it's great to be here. My name is Nick Suplina, and I am with Everytown for Gun Safety. We are the country's largest gun violence prevention organization.
And how did you get the role that you're in today? Like, have you been with the org long, or is this a relatively new place?
Yeah, I've been flirting with 8 years at Everytown and was involved in gun violence work in a prior life as well. I was at the New York Attorney General's office as both a prosecutor and a policy guy, but did a lot of work, maybe it was foreshadowing, in both guns and gun violence, but also in technology and technology for the office in terms of updating sort of how we did investigations and what tools. And so I came to Everytown because I saw the work that they were doing and was amazed by it. And, you know, this is, in my view, the sort of critical public health issue of our time, and one that really animated me, upset me, made me think I would want to spend my career working on this and trying to improve the situation. And so I came over, about 7.5 years ago to Everytown, and I'm now the Senior Vice President for Law and Policy here.
And I have to be honest, those listening at home today will hear the difference in our accents, Nick. So obviously I'm British, but I moved to the US in 2021. I brought my family across. So I brought my two young girls at the time. They were 9 and 4 or 5, and being honest with you, when we moved to the US, my kids had never seen a gun. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't, you can look at this different ways, but they have now both seen a real gun. It's something that we've had a lot of discussions around, and obviously talking about what to do if you were to ever come across one and what have you. It's been a challenge. It's been a journey. And I think this coming across to the US has really opened my eyes to this. Like, it's a much bigger issue than I had ever really thought it was. They are really quite common over in the US. And I think it doesn't matter what state you live in, they're just a lot more common than you would hope.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no question that guns are ubiquitous in the US. There's no firm numbers on how many, but you're talking about something in the area of 350 million firearms, more likely more guns than people. And in fact, that number, it does not apply equally across states. There are some states with much higher gun ownership rates and some with much lower. And even among that number, a lot of those guns are concentrated. So, there are many folks in the country that own 10 or 20 or 40 or 100 firearms. And so what you're really looking at is about a third of households in the U.S. have a firearm, which is a lot. And like I said, but that's actually much higher in certain states and much lower in others. And so when you start thinking about gun violence and you start with the gun, you got to ask yourself, well, if this is the status quo, if this is how things are, what laws, policies, programs, initiatives, can you undertake to make the negative parts of firearms and firearms ownership as low as possible? And that's kind of our business. That's our objective at Everytown, to reduce gun violence through common sense laws and policies. And it's a real challenge. And it's a real challenge in no small part because of the sheer number of firearms in the country.
I don't think I had any idea how many firearms were. I find it wild, and I'm not going to lie, I find it wild that there is no hard and fast number. Like, we can't estimate this accurately. Like that, to me, in 2025, we just had assumed, probably very wrongly, that people would have a tighter steer on that stuff. And we just don't. I mean, obviously there are some numbers floating around, but I don't think we'll ever be able to truly know what that number really is.
A theme of our work and even some of the problems we're trying to tackle with technology is a chronic under resourced data environment for firearms and for gun violence. To be frank about it, it's not like we just landed here and somebody forgot to count the guns or forgot to, have a reliable source of reporting on where the guns are coming from. Because the issue is so politicized in this country, there are deliberate efforts to suppress data, to deny public access to data that the government does have. And so our lack of a firm number really stems from those efforts, right? The government's not, the federal government in particular, is not allowed to know how many firearms are in what hands and who has them. And that's by statute. And so we really are really trying to fight a public health crisis with one, sometimes two hands tied behind our back because data is so scarce and is systematically denied. You might have a gun dealer, say in Florida, who is selling a number of firearms that are ending up in crimes. And the public, records would show that it's a disproportionately high number, and maybe the community wants to know, hey, this gun dealer up the street is fine and reputable, and this one over here is selling guns that are being used by criminals and harming members of our community. Again, by statute, you're not allowed to know that gun dealer is selling crime guns or at what rate or let alone to who. And so, we want to change some of that. That's part of our advocacy, is just changing the laws around data and information. But we also aren't going to wait for those laws to change and need to sometimes innovate around the gaps on our own.
I like the fact that you use the word innovate there, because a bit of background for those of you at home. I had the amazing pleasure of attending N10 this year, and you guys were actually giving a talk. I think it was your labs team that were giving a talk around some of the incredible work that you do and some of the projects that have recently happened. And I don't want to give too much away because I'm really keen for you to tell us, Nick, on what you're actually doing at the moment. I'm coming at it with this, dare I say it, because everyone is talking about AI right now, but you guys are doing some really exciting stuff using AI. Am I right?
I would agree with that characterization. I think it's really exciting and important. So within Everytown, we have a lot of different departments and efforts. We have grassroots organizers, we have communications professionals, and as of this year, we have launched Everytown Labs, which is our project to surface and accelerate artificial intelligence to address gun violence, to develop products and deliver insights that can support our gun safety mission. The project itself kind of really came about a couple of years ago. We launched only earlier this year, but we started thinking about it a couple of years ago. Not always the earliest adapter of technology. I've been kind of skeptical, especially of the new shiny thing that's going to be the thing that changes everything and get about. But when generative AI really hit the scene, and I had done work in the past with some machine learning for public policy purposes and at the Attorney General's office, which I mentioned. I was like, oh, this is real. This could be really powerful for us. And what would it look like to not have, let's say, a nonprofit dedicated to gun violence miss the boat on the upside of this technology, even as folks were already debating the pros and cons of artificial intelligence and having very big picture conversations. It occurred to me you know what, this is coming. And I think our issue deserves all the benefits of this technology. So let's start to dip our toe in. And we did. And we did with really in a couple of areas, which I'm happy to share with you, Puff. So really the first experiment for us was creating a chatbot, which I think for a lot of businesses and nonprofits is sort of the kind of no-brainer place to start because it seems so readily available. For us, there was a little bit more reason behind it. I was an early user of ChatGPT and some of the other LLMs, and it was getting gun violence stuff wrong. It wasn't very good understanding the policy. It was particularly bad on data and on rates of gun violence and the like. And, prone to hallucination. Back then, recency was a real problem. And so, we felt like if we're going to start building a foundation for our AI, we should have a knowledge base that is our information, vetted, authentic, and clean. And let's build the chatbot around that. And that way we can be sure. And by we, it's not just us internally, it's our supporters, it's members of the press, it's elected officials and other stakeholders that need reliable information. And here we are making that information that much more accessible through the product we call Ask Everytown. So Ask Everytown as an offering, I think, was like a really important kind of we can do it moment for us. And I'm happy to share not happy to share, but I'm happy to share with you that there were some stumbling blocks along the way. And we learned a lot in the process of trying to build this. But as a foundation for our work, it's not just the tool that we've now put online, which we will continue to improve. That really will be the foundation for all of Everytown Labs work, because we've realized, you can curate a data set, an understanding of an issue, and really never have to say no to more information. And with that information may come new insights and new revelations. And again, in a field where we're very confident we've got the right answers, we're also very open to the idea that there may be others. There may be other things we're missing. There may be trends in data and policy and the world out there that we don't see, and maybe AI can help us see them. And so that's the sort of animating force behind the whole project. And, earlier this year, when we launched Everytown Labs, we launched Ask Everytown as the sort of like foundational product. But we didn't stop there, Puff. But wait, there's more. More? Yes? Okay. We've already actually started talking about this, right? Data in our issue it's a scarcity. If you are trying to fight what I earlier called the public health crisis of our time, how do you do it without reliable, current, and rich data? Like, imagine trying to combat COVID-19 with data that was a month old, let alone what it is in our case, which is 18 months old, official data. And to be blunt about it, it's only going to get worse. We're already seeing cuts at the CDC and some of the units that actually track gun violence and make that information available to the public being cut. So we're at an enormous deficit, and when it comes to knowing what does gun violence look like today in the United States. And so we set out to create what ultimately became Everyshot, which is a near real-time gun violence awareness tool that uses AI to read tens of thousands of news articles, pull relevant ones, and then pull from those articles all of the different factors and criteria that we want to track that occurred in that shooting. And it's all in a beautiful interface now on everyshot.org that really allows, with a few clicks, to get right into the nature of gun violence in the United States. And it's one of those things like, you did good because I keep going to it and being impressed by it. You're there for all the little steps along the way, and you're still like, wow, we did this thing and it's working and it's getting better every day and more comprehensive in what it's covering. I keep saying it's a data tool, and it is. It's good at counting and tracking. But what really has blown me away a little, that I did not see when we set out to do this, is it's like a really powerful narrative tool. There's something about being able to click into a particular location on a particular day and see what gun violence really looks like, and the names and the places where it occurs. And it's a bar fight that escalates into a shooting, and it's domestic violence, and it's an unintentional shooting by a child of a child. And you really feel it. And I'm in this line of work. I mean, it's my job to know this, and I know this to be true, but to see it and to have technology be able to deliver it that way is so powerful, and honestly something that I didn't see when we first started to figure out the technical challenge of pulling this data together.
I mean, you described it as a data tool, right? But I think the beauty of this is that you're bringing really hard to get information, data together, but the interface is so simple and easy for someone to use. That's the magic of it for me. Like, it's bringing that incredible interface, and it makes it feel really easy and simple to use. It sounds really easy to do that. It's not. For them, like, that's a really hard thing to do. But you are surfacing this data in a way that I don't know, you're just allowing people to get into the details a lot more, but also it's humanizing like what's actually happening out there. These are real people in real places. It's not just, like another news story and another number, another death or another injury. Like, these are real people in real places, and it's happening now. Like, the fact that this is near real time blows my mind, because you said earlier that official data, it takes up to 18 months. So you're basically working 18 months behind what's actually going on. Is that right?
By and large, yes. And, there are sometimes informal, unofficial data that comes out before 18 months, but the CDC, the official counts lag dramatically. And, I use the pandemic and COVID-19 as an example, but during the COVID-19, gun violence was spiking in the US. I mean, spiking. And it was counterintuitive because you figure people are at home more, and surely that must mean less gun violence. And in terms of certain areas, that was true. But in fact, gun violence was spiking. I mean, this was collapse of critical social infrastructure. This was a general feeling of uncertainty and disruption in institutions and public life. Gun buying spiked and gun violence spiked as well. But we were flying a little bit blind then. I mean, we were seeing it and seeing the reports, and you'd get one police department giving you, better, realer time information, or you'd get other, but to be able to track it, to be able to really understand it, and then to be able to see what these incidents look like is what Everyshot provides that really hadn't existed before. More recently, and the good news, some of our work, especially, several years ago, but in the States, is paying off. Gun violence has seen dramatic declines in recent years. Some of that feels like coming down off of the pandemic high, the sort of artificially high pandemic spike, but a lot of it is investment in programs and policies that we know work. But what we're able to see now with Everyshot is it working evenly across the country, or is it dropping more precipitously in other certain places? Are there particular types of gun violence that are nevertheless not going down? Like something like, say, road rage, which is a real problem in this country. Everybody everywhere in the world knows how to get very angry in a car. You're isolated, you're pissed off that somebody cut you off. But in most places, that's resolved with a traditional middle finger in the air and some choice words. But when more and more states have allowed it to be so easy to carry guns in public and have them readily accessible in the car, in the US, gun violence can erupt. And, that hasn't really abated. That still is persisting, and we're seeing examples of it across the country.
And it's so true. Like, I should just say, I've not seen anything, but having moved from the UK to the US, if I've been in the car, if I've got angry, if my husband's got angry, I've just been like, don't do anything. Just keep your hands on the wheel. Like, no face, no gestures, no hand, like nothing. Just keep your hands on the wheel, because you just don't know. Like, there's just so many unknowns, I think, in the US versus UK. That's certainly been my experience. But
well, I will tell you that is prudent self-advice, but I am a native New Yorker, so there's really no choice in the matter. I need to let people know about their driving skills, but you are right that we are raising the risks of a whole lot of interactions, which again may even lead to physical violence, like throwing punches. But here, you introduce a firearm, and now all of a sudden you're escalating violence to potentially lethal outcomes. And again, that's some of those baked in risks of guns, everywhere.
So, right, you've got these two amazing new tools, right? And they've come out this year. And you mentioned earlier as well that, you'd been thinking about setting up the labs, or something about how you could better utilize AI about 2 years before it actually got set up. Talk to me about that journey more, and why it took so long, because I have to admit, Nick, you're talking about it and you've made it sound really easy, that labs, and now you've got these wonderful 2 new projects, and it sounds very like like, you are making incredible progress. But for all the others out there listening that are in not-for-profits right now, and, you know, the current climate isn't great. Like, it's really, really hard to be in this space right now. There are budget cuts, there are people changes, like there's so much going on. How have you gone about all of this? And talk to me about maybe some of the challenges that you faced.
Yeah, great question, great points. And it really is also the moment right now for nonprofits generally. I was talking about gun violence and gun violence data, but it's incumbent upon us all to use whatever tools we can to offset some of the changes to how, to whether it's funding or attention or the like. So, I mean, it was so easy. We just said, make the thing happen, and then it happened overnight. Don't do any follow-up questions with my team on that, and it was easy. I will say, we getting started was slow. There was a lot of both. What I have found within and without our organization is there were among, especially in the early stages, there was always like two viewpoints: either AI is everything and it's going to be everything and like do the magic AI thing, or that's a bunch of garbage, we don't need it, don't change anything, why would you do it? And it's sort of like, navigating those forces and understanding like what the best use case is for this technology was a lot of the early days, just trying to figure out, do we focus internally, do we focus externally? Much of what Everytown Labs does is really bringing tools to our community, to our stakeholders that are specifically focused on gun violence prevention and our sort of substantive mission. And that was a choice that I think is a good choice, a good use, because we're only advancing our mission further by implementing the technology. Some lessons learned along the way, I think, especially for nonprofits, but I'm sure the private sector struggled with this too. There's this sort of like inclination, like hire a consultant to go do a thing, and and that way we can see if it's the proof of concept works, and we did that for Ask Everytown. And first of all, the state of the field is moving so fast that if you're building in any kind of like static environment, you're going to be outdated by the time you're done. And that happened to us at least twice in the build. The notion of the problem of recency, right? It was not that long ago that one of ChatGPT's main limitations was it was only, it was trained a year ago.
Yeah.
That was one of the problems we were solving for. The ability to read structured data was very much a problem we were solving for, and still is dynamic, I'd say, in the AI space. But we have a lot of structured data. We've got CDC data. We've got other we're official counters of a lot of aspects of gun violence. And so, we did it. We got to a good proof of concept. It was, in fact, sufficient to sort of make the case, like, this is worth it. This is very interesting. But we basically crumpled it up and threw it away and started over and built something much more powerful, much more adaptable. And we did that in part by bringing somebody in-house who could help build it and really understand us and our needs and the field all at the same time. And that, I would say, is hard in a resource-constrained environment, but worth the investment for sure, because it's made all the difference. And now when I look at to the horizon about sort of what it is that Everytown Labs could work on and should work on as we go forward, I'm able to think so much bigger about the potential, because I know it's not a contract that's going to be done in a month, that's going to have a deliverable and going to be old and outdated by the time we launch it.
It's really interesting hearing you say you had to start over, like you started something and then basically had to get rid of it and then start again. Actually, for anyone listening, so we set out, it's not live yet, but hopefully by the time this goes out it will be live, but we set out to do our new website using AI. And it was going to be AI first. That's what we were going to do. And this is very ambitious, but we set out, we were like, let's see what we can do in a day. Let's see what we can do. And I think if we were so our current website as it stands right now, we could easily redo that in a day using AI tools. That's fine. But what we found was, and it is, you used the word experiment like much earlier in this podcast, but that's what it was. There's a lot more experimentation going on. And what we discovered was the tools out there are really pushing boundaries in terms of that creativity and what you can actually do. And in some cases, it's making what we say the hard easy. So
Yes.
a lot of stuff that used to take ages, we could do quite quickly. But on the flip side, a lot of the small things that used to be able to do really quickly, it takes really long to do because it's much harder to do the finishing touches. And what we found was we could get to that 80% really, really quickly. But actually, that final 20% is much, much harder than you anticipate.
Yeah.
And being honest, we didn't do it in a day. We didn't even do it in a week. I reckon it'd be about a month. But you know, the current website probably took a few months to do when we did it back in 2017, 2018. It's quite dated now. So it's been really quite interesting to see what you can achieve with these tools. It's amazing, but it's also there's some there's other bits that are much harder. And I think it's interesting to hear your view, like you brought someone in-house because they could understand your way of working, your organization. You could achieve more, but you've also got that person on a continual basis, so you can continuously improve together. But it's really refreshing to hear the fact that you went into this and not that you were okay with the fact that you had to redo it. Like, don't get me wrong, they are frustrating moments in a project.
Yes.
Really
Yeah.
frustrating. But how did you cope when that was the case? When the moment that you realized, oh my gosh, like we've just wasted all this time.
Well, and I will tell you, I don't even remember if I said this at the top, but I'm an attorney by trade. This idea of move fast and break things is not my ethos, right? It's like, get it right, get it exactly right. There's no room for error, and you never look back and be like, oh, we got to start it over. I totally agree with your characterization of the speed with which you can get to almost there is like so fast, but that final 5 and 10% is often the difference between like a really useful or amazing product and just some stuff you did vibe coding on the weekend or whatever.
Oh, you used the term vibe coding.
I have, as an attorney, I have been I have no background in formal computer science or anything, and these tools have really opened up my ability to start trying things and just for fun and trying to build some things that I never would have really known even where to start before. And so that part's been really amazing. I will say, like, I was disappointed when I realized, that we'd start over. I do also, even at the time, I think we recognized we learned a ton in that process. It wasn't truly starting over. It was the platform we built it on and the way we built it isn't the sustainable, ideal way. Let's bring our development into the cloud and let's start relying on those tools for support, because that way we can have our project benefit from new technologies and new offerings and the like. What we learned in that build period, we very much carried into the next version. I would say we could have saved some time and effort had we had somebody capable of executing in-house from the beginning.
Yeah, no, and I think that's fair. But hey, hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? We learn these lessons as we go through. But the fact that you have acknowledged and you're injecting that into future projects, which is great. So I have a question. The two products, I'm going to call them products, that the labs team have created this year, they're both live. How are they doing? Like, how are people interacting with these tools? Are they using them how you would expect?
Yes, it's going great. Become Everytown Labs itself and these two tools have become some of the most visited pages on our website, and our website gets a fair, healthy bit of traffic. People are using the tools. I would also say this is some advice for those out there. We've really solicited our users for feedback, both in Ask Everytown and in Every Shot, different ways of soliciting that feedback, but we very much wanted from the beginning folks to identify bugs or things they wish would happen differently or different answers. And we tested Ask Everytown internally pretty significantly because it was very important for us to create a responsible and accurate tool, and we didn't want to take too much risk throwing something out there that wasn't to our standards of accuracy. But I will say they're doing great. We're hearing great stories about how it's being used. One piece of feedback we've gotten from, Moms Demand Action is our grassroots sort of army of gun sense supporters. And we've had all this great feedback from moms who have used the chatbot to help them draft letters to the editor, to quickly respond to developing news and the like. We sort of saw that as a use case, but that they're doing it is amazing and that it's actually helping and they're being published is incredible. I think on every shot, I believe in short order, it will become the preferred research tool in our movement. And I think already there are folks that are seeing, like we were talking about before, the qualitative and substantive aspect of it as a really powerful tool for advocacy and research. So I've seen my colleagues, I have used like that knowledge in there to great effect already. We're able to respond so much more quickly and efficiently when there are inquiries that come in, say, from the press. Hey, what happened in Detroit this weekend? Well, let me tell you exactly. But I also would say that there's so much more. And the combination of these tools and other data sets is, to me, where the future for us is. So when you take that real-time gun violence awareness and you put that into your knowledge base with an LLM sitting on top of it and put in there a database of gun laws going back 25 years and historic gun violence data and the best research out there on what works. Now you're talking about like who knows what kind of insights come out of that. That's really exciting to me, to not know even what questions we could ask that we haven't even been able to ask before, because you're lowering, the time and the cost of asking, getting an answer by so much. And that really, in a field, in an issue that is desperate for hope and inspiration, like that technology might be able to provide some of it is really heartening to me.
And you know what? It's so encouraging to hear that technology is really helping in this case. Like, I think it's just such a bigger issue than I had ever imagined, to be honest. And you called it potentially the biggest public health crisis. Like, that's not a lens I had viewed this with, but certainly after today's conversation, it definitely is. Hearing some of those stats banded about, it's just on such a bigger scale than I had ever imagined. But that, like you said, or you alluded to earlier in the recording, you've got so much data. Like, where do you even start if we're not collating this data? So the fact that you've got these interfaces now that allow people, anyone almost, to get the information they need as quickly as possible is pretty incredible. And you've done it pretty quickly, to be honest with you. I know like you mentioned, it probably took a couple of years to get the lab together, but actually, on the whole, but I think you've acknowledged it needs to continuously improve, though, right? Like,
Yes.
These products that once you put out there, you're going to get insights and learnings. And you gave a nod to it earlier, but the fact that you're talking to users and understanding how they're actually using the products, and then you're using that insight to drive any continuous improvements, which is brilliant, right? That's the way you want to go about these things. So, Nick, you guys are doing some incredible things. Is there anyone else, like any other organizations out there that are doing incredible work that you want to shine a light on? Anything that's inspired you or your team?
On the technology front.
Yeah.
Yeah, I very much I know this is going to sound like, of course, you're inspired by this, but it was hearing the early progress on AlphaGo that made me think, oh, we can do anything. If you can map 3D protein models and take a lifetime's worth of dissertation work and do it in a day or two in pursuit of curing cancer, maybe this technology has a power that we need to tap into. And it's obviously totally different use case and totally different technology, and a project that had a lot more resources behind it than Everytown Labs. The conceit of it, just the idea that you could start with something very small and basic and build it and build it and build it to something that can have a remark and everybody in it is really a source of inspiration for me. And again, in a field where sometimes you're looking for inspiration because it is hard work and because progress does not come at the speed that you want it to be able to think expansively like that is really freeing, and for me is it's really inspiring.
Thank you, Nick, and I totally agree. And for anyone listening, Nick, because I had the pleasure of listening to this amazing talk at N10, but if anyone wants more information about these products, I think the URL's in the bio for this episode.
Yes. Everytownlabs.org. You can get to both of the tools that we discussed today, and share them with your friends. Give us feedback if you're seeing things that you think should be improved. That all puts you as part of the effort. And for folks that want to get plugged in directly to our work, you can text READY to 64433. My incredible colleagues, with or without technology, always find a way to get you involved at the level that you want to get involved. It's really extraordinary. And so I would encourage anybody who wants to do that.
Amazing. Well, Nick, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope for anyone listening or anyone that is about to embark on an AI type project or it doesn't matter if it's AI or just a big type project, I hope you're leaving this episode today feeling a little bit inspired and just ready to go forward for that positive approach, because what you guys have achieved is absolutely incredible in a relatively short space of time. So hats off to you all, and thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation.